Hello, welcome to the Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob, and in this video, we're going to be looking at the faction focus for Nurgle. So keep those social distance. That's a terrible intro. I'm going to keep going anyway. We're looking at the Maggotkin of Nurgle, and it's looking very, very good. As always, I'd love you to leave comments down below about all your thoughts and feelings on this faction focus and everything that you think about it and what you like. So let's dive straight in. If you're going to be playing Maggotkin of Nurgle, they are obviously chaos characters and chaos people that have committed themselves to spreading disease and pestilence across the world. And therefore, their traits and many of their abilities are all based around a disease or disease mechanic, which is cool. So now we're going to look at their battle traits, which is the effects, rules that affect their entire army. And the first one is Blessed by the Plague Father. And I promise you, you're going to be a little underwhelmed as you start to read it, but as we get through a lot of the review, you're going to be incredibly impressed, in my personal opinion. So this is done once per turn across the army, so the whole army can do it once, at the end of any turn, but also that means the end of every turn, which is cool. What you do is you pick one of the following effects. You've got Infect, Spread, and Mutate. The first one, Infect, is you pick an enemy unit that's in combat with a friendly Maggotkin of Nurgle unit, and that target has the diseased keyword. So a bit of disease, just a bit of disease. Stick a bit of disease. Okay, very easy. So turn one, get my unit into combat with another unit, pick that unit. At the end of the turn, they're diseased. Next one is Spread. Pick a diseased enemy unit to be the target. Each other enemy unit within the target's combat range, which is 3 inches, has the diseased keyword. Wild. So you could potentially spread this to a lot of units very quickly. And that's really, really important for what we can do after. Next is Mutate. This is really hard to do. If all enemy units on the battlefield, every single one has the disease keyword, you inflict 1 mortal damage on them. And this is where initially I was like, oh, it's really hard to do for an incredibly small reward. But you do have 2 massive rewards immediately from making units diseased. The first one is the passive Desperate Remedies. If a disease unit uses an ability that would heal or return slain models to it, instead of healing or return slain models, that unit no longer has the diseased keyword. And while it's great they get rid of the diseased keyword, it also means they get no more healing or rezzing, right? Which is really, really powerful against the right types of units, where bringing models back or even healing wounds into units is really good. It's exactly what we saw in the Tzeentch preview as well with the burning keyword, and this is really good. Might not sound super good on paper, but I promise you that's really, really effective. In addition, it also means I have an ability to stop being diseased, which is also nice for my army. But if my army doesn't have a lot of healing mechanics, then boy, is this going to be a problem. Now, the reason it's going to be a problem because you have the once per turn across the army at the end of any turn, which is the end of every turn. Roll a d3 for each diseased enemy unit. On a 2+, inflict an amount of mortal damage that is equal to the roll. So you're either going to do 2 or 3 mortal damage to every unit on the board, or you're either going to do 0, 2, or 3 mortal damage to every disease unit on the board at the end of every turn, which is pretty wild, because that means if on turn 1 I disease a unit, then I roll 3 mortal damage and then 3 mortal damage. That's going to be 6 mortal damage over just battle round 1. That's pretty good. That's pretty good, and that's just if only 1 unit is diseased. Okay. I promise you, that's a good suite, especially with everything else we've seen. Next up, we're going to look at battle formations. In Age of Sigmar 4, every army is going to have up to 4 battle formations that they can play. It's like a style of army, and it gives you different benefits, sometimes to units, sometimes to the way you're going to play. The one that they've focused on is the Taliban of Nurgle, and that's got the passive Disease and Pestilence personified. What this does is the effect from the second battle round onwards, you add 1 to the amount of mortal damage inflicted, if any, by the Racked and Disease ability. That's where you do the D3 mortal damage at the end of any turn. And I'm unsurprised to see this say from the second battle round onwards, because this means that from the second battle round onwards, any units of diseased could be taking potentially 4 mortal damage every player turn. That's crazy amounts of mortal damage. And that could be 4 mortal damage across multiple different units across your whole army every player turn. That is nuts amounts. If you can just do the right combo, get that right spread at the right time, it's really good. Next up, we're going to look at the Arcana and Incantations. When you're building an Age of Sigmar 4 list, you always will choose a spell law for your whole army. This one is the Law of Malignance. You'll also choose a Manifestation law, which is some endless spells that you're able to bring as well. When you choose your spell law, though, every wizard in your army is going to be able to cast any spell from that spell law. So you're no longer choosing spells for your wizards, which is nice. And if any spells have the unlimited keyword, then every wizard that you have in your army can attempt to cast that spell in your hero phase, which is nice. So you can cast it multiple times, but not with the same wizard. The spell that they focused on is Fleshy Abundance, and it's cast on a 7. You pick a friendly Maggotkin of Nurgle wizard to cast your spell, and you pick a visible friendly Maggotkin of Nurgle unit wholly within 12 inches of them to be the target. So wholly within 12. So that's quite close. If the target unit is damaged, you can heal D3 to the target. If the target is not damaged, you can subtract 1 from the wound rolls for attacks that target that unit until the start of your next turn. And that's really nice, in my personal opinion, because you've got that ability to be -1 to wound, which is my favorite debuff that you can get. +1 to wound being my favorite kind of bonus that you can get if you're just talking about straight attacks and minuses. So that unit is -1 to be wounded. That's great. You can do this on multiple units. That's great. Or you can heal multiple units with your wizards. Also excellent. Now we're going to look at units, and we've talked a lot about how we think it's about the centerpiece edition. Age of Sigmar 4 might be about those big centerpiece models, your Kregnoses, your Archaons. The Great Unclean One, as a non-named character, is coming in really strong. 20 health, 4-up save with a 5-up ward save. You can find out if they've got a ward save down below, just here. It's also a level 2 wizard, which means it's as good of a wizard as a Lord of Change. It's not really fair, but whatever. Okay, so cast 2 spells, is really survivable, 20 health, got a 4-up save, and a 5-up ward save. So it's survivable. Guess what? It's also really punchy. It's got a shooting attack that you can do, which is 7-inch range, which is D3 +3. It hits on a 3, wounds on a 2, as Rend 2 and damage 2, but importantly, can shoot into combat. So that's potentially up to 12 damage that this can do in combat or at shooting. Then in fighting, it's got its big colossal blight weapon, which is 4 attacks, hits on a 3, wins on 2, Rend 2 damage 4 for potential 16 damage from that. And then it's got a host of Nurglings, which is 10 attacks that do critical auto wound, but they're 5s and 5, so it's not really important. Now, there is one downside, that it's quite slow, movement 6 in this army, so it's going to be a little bit difficult to get up the board, but thanks to the new countercharge mechanic that's in the game, being able to move this and then run this in your turn up the board, then countercharge, is going to make this much faster than it once was. It has the battle damage trait, which is if it ends up taking 10 or more damage, it loses 1 of its attacks, but only loses 1, so that's fine. Then it's got some really great stuff. I'm going to jump straight over to the fact that it's a wizard. I'm going to jump straight there, because we've already talked about diseases, and we're going to talk about the fact its spell, which is cast on a 7, Plague Wind, is picking a visible enemy unit within 12 inches. Now, 12 inches is quite close. It's quite hard to get within that range. And if you cast a spell, that unit is going to be diseased. So now we have the end of the turn ability to get a disease and a spell to get a disease on a unit. So now that's a lot of units with disease taking mortal damage. That's pretty good. Let's also talk about the fact that you can use the command ability to also do this spell in your opponent's turn. So now potentially across the first battle round, I can disease up to 4 units, assuming I haven't done any spread mechanic either. So potentially even more. So start to add that into how much mortal damage the army can take. This is really good. And I feel that's one of the reasons you will take the Great Unclean One. In addition to a reason you would probably take the Great Unclean One, is it's once per turn for the army. In your movement phase, you can use the Locus of Nurgle. So this is once per turn for the whole army, so if you have another ability to do it, you won't be able to do it again. But it's done in every turn, which is nice. You pick a friendly Maggotkin of Nurgle demon unit that started the battle round with 3 or more models, and that has been destroyed by the target. On a 4+, you set up a replacement unit up to half strength, wholly within 12 inches of this unit and more than 9 inches from enemy units. I think some people will be disappointed about the fact that it requires a 4-up to roll. Some people will be excited about the fact it doesn't cost a command point. Some people will be pretty happy about the fact that you can bring any units back from the dead at all, which is quite nice. And it's locked into a very survivable character in your Great Unclean One, and isn't locked into your faction terrain, which might be a little less survivable, like we'll see with Skaven with Gnawholes, or we see with Gloomspite Gits. Lastly, it's got another ability, a Rampage, which is done once per turn at the end of any turn, which means the end of every turn, where you pick, if this unit is damaged, you pick up to 3 enemy units in combat with this unit. 3 enemy units. Roll a d3 and on a 2+, you inflict that many mortal damage. So it's either going to do 0, 2, or 3 mortal damage. But seeing as this is done at the end of a turn, very much like your disease mechanic is done at the end of the turn, you're talking about an absolutely horrific amount of mortal damage from this character plus all the disease mechanics, in my personal opinion. Just the Great Unclean One itself could be responsible for 9 mortal damage at the end of a turn. It's pretty nice. There is obviously a downside. It's slow. I think many people are going to want to point this out in the YouTube comments. Yes, it is slow, but with countercharge, this model is faster than it ever has been, in my personal opinion. And it moves faster than it once did, because it's movement 6. Next, we're going to look at our favourite character, Sloppity Bilepiper. Sloppity Bilepiper has got 5 health with a 5-up save, and has got a 5-up ward save, okay? And now his combat profile isn't the important point or the reason you would take him. The reason you would take this character is you would take the Jolly Gut Pipes ability, which is done once per turn in the combat phase, which means it's done in every combat phase. You pick a visible, friendly Maggotkin of Nurgle demon unit wholly within 12 inches to be the target. You roll a dice, and on a 2+, you get to do one of 3 effects. A stabbing wound will go, adds 1 to the wound rolls for the target's attacks, which is a great combat ability. Early one evening, my pustule was seeping, which means ward rolls cannot be made for damage points inflicted by the target's combat attacks. Crazy. No ward saves. We saw yesterday Fireslayers being able to get ward saves on all their units. Now you decide to do that and you're like, no ward saves for you. Crazy. And finally, my love is like a right fart. You subtract 1 from the hit rolls for attacks made by enemy units that target the target unit. You add that in conjunction with the fact that you can make a unit -1 to wound, so a unit can be -1 to hit, -1 to wound. Whew, pretty good. He's also, he's got that 5-up ward save, which is really nice. Next, we look at the Harbinger of Decay, incredible model, which has got 7 health, a 3-up save, and a 5-up ward save. So very survivable when we're talking about foot characters. But, and most importantly, he's a Wololo. He's a level 1 priest. So he can Wololo up to 1 prayer in your hero phase, and using a command ability, you can do it in your opponent's hero phase, which is really important. So like I said, very survivable, 7 health, 3-up save. Not bad in combat. Got potential to do 9 damage from his Rot Sword, which is not bad. He has his once per battle army ability, which can be done in the enemy hero phase, where he picks 3 enemy units within 24 inches, which is a pretty massive range for an ability to be the targets. Until the start of your next turn, you subtract 1 from the move characteristic of each target, and you subtract 1 from the run rolls and charge rolls for each target as well. So it's not an incredibly massive effect. It's pretty like meh, but you know, it's on there and it's not bad. And -1 to charge is actually quite effective. There might be other ways in this army, like we've seen in other armies, to make it so units only charge on a d6. If you could combo those together, that means units are going to really struggle to get big, long charges in. Now, he's got his own unique spell, unique prayer, because he is a priest. He does like to Wololo, and it is prayed on a 4. It's incanted on a 4. The way you do prayers in Age of Sigmar 4 is in your hero phase, you roll a dice to attempt to incant a prayer. And then whatever the result is, as long as it's not a 1, is how many points you can put into a bank to cast a prayer. Obviously, if you roll a 4 or more, initially you can immediately cast this prayer. However, you can, over subsequent turns, save up those points so that you can incant a more powerful version. If you ever roll a 1, you take D3 away from the pool that you have, and if you had 0, then you get none. Really easy. Okay, so what does this prayer do? It's really good. What you do is you pick a visible enemy unit within 12 inches unit to be the target, and then you roll a dice. You subtract twice the current battle round number from the target's control score for the rest of the turn, which is cool. So on battle round 3, you'll be taking 6 away from a unit that's within 12 inches. That's pretty good. Even on battle round 1, you'll be taking 2 away from their control score, which can be the difference between holding objective or not. Where this gets crazy is if you roll the empowered version on a 10 or more, then it's all enemy units within 12 inches, not wholly within 12 inches, within 12 inches. So this means, especially in later rounds, this will become devastating. From turn 3 onwards, this means every unit potentially within 12 inches of this model is going to be -6. Battle Round 4 is going to be -8. And then Battle Round 5 is going to be -10. So effectively, if this guy's on the board, you aren't going to be holding objectives. You won't be scoring, right? That's pretty good, in my personal opinion. Very, very cool. As well as that, he's obviously a priest, so he's going to have access to other generic prayers as well, which I think is spicy. Lastly, we have Putrid Blightkings. This is a unit of 5 models, and with 3 health each, that gives them a wound pool of 15 health, and they have a 3-up armor save, and guess what? A 5-up ward save. That is an incredible profile. It's effectively half of King Brod at the moment. So I personally think very good. In combat, they're not that exciting. 4 attacks, 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage 1, with no special ability. So doesn't really feel like Games Workshop want you to take these. Couldn't even bother to give them like a disease mechanic or anything. But they do have this passive, which is a bloated bulwark. This adds 3 to the unit's control score, while each model in this unit is contesting an objective. Let's talk about control values and control scores. This unit of 5 models, the Putrid Blightkings, have got a control value of 1. That means each model in the unit counts as 1. Therefore, your control score will be 5. If you're holding an objective, you're able to add 3 to that for a control score of 8. So control value and control score are different from each other. And that's an important thing to note, in my opinion. And the way you hold objectives is you have the largest control score holding an objective within 3 inches of a 40 mil marker that you put on the board for the objectives that you see on deployment. And the easiest way to work out where those objectives are is to get some honest Wargamer objective markers included in the link below, which is really nice. We've even got faction tokens, including some Nurgle ones, which is quite fun. Anyway. These guys don't see... I know, I got them right at the end. They didn't think they were getting it. But that is the Nurgle preview, to be honest. Now, I personally think, having read that and having read each one of the previews so far, feels like a lot of mortal damage. Ignoring how much mortal damage it is, it also feels like the ability to make many units not be able to heal is also really good. So I like that as well. So I think that there's some real opportunity to do a lot of crazy damage with this army. And we might be starting to see armies that have different styles, as in units don't necessarily, or there's not always a hammer piece and a defensive piece. And maybe it's all about the cohesive playstyle. We'll have to see if that pans out. And obviously everything you've read in these articles is all dependent on points. Great Unclean One seems great so far, but if he's 1,400 points, probably not as good as if he ends up being 400 points. So it's all going to be about those points values, which is really the make or break of what this game looks like, and has always been the way it works, which I think is fun. Anyway, let me know what you think of the video. Thank you very much. And if you'd like to join the Honest Wargamer Patreon, we've got a really active community talking about all these different units and armies, then do, because it's really fun and we're having a good time talking about these things. Thanks very much for watching the show. Appreciate you. See you guys soon.